There's a moment, most people never see it coming, when money stops being something you chase and starts being something that works without you. Not because you got lucky, not because you inherited anything, but because of a number, a specific number you crossed, probably without even realizing it, that quietly rewired how wealth actually accumulates in your life. Most people spend their entire careers optimizing the wrong thing. They focus on income, they track their salary, they celebrate raises, and every single year they wonder why the gap between them and the people above them keeps getting wider, even when they're working just as hard, just as smart, sometimes harder. Here's the uncomfortable part. It's not about effort, it's about thresholds. There are 3 specific net worth milestones, not arbitrary numbers, but structural turning points, where the math of money fundamentally changes, where the rules you've been playing by quietly get replaced by a different set of rules. Rules that most people don't even know exist because nobody teaches them, and the people who've crossed them rarely explain what actually shifted. Today, we're going to walk through all 3, what they are, why they work the way they do, and why crossing one without understanding the mechanics is almost as useless as never crossing it at all. Let's start with a man named David. David is 34. He makes good money, $90,000 a year, which puts him comfortably above the median household income in the United States. He saves diligently, puts 15% of his paycheck into his 401k every month like clockwork. He has about $40,000 in investments, $12,000 in savings, and a car worth around $10,000. No inheritance, no side hustle windfall, just consistent work and reasonable discipline. By almost any cultural standard, David is doing well. But David also has a growing, creeping suspicion that no matter how much he saves, no matter how many months he stays on budget, he never actually feels like the needle is moving. The people in his office who seem effortlessly wealthy, they're not saving more aggressively than him. Some of them are objectively worse with money, and yet something is different about their trajectory. David is right, something is different, and that difference has a name. It's called the first milestone. The first milestone is $100,000 in investable assets. Not net worth, not home equity. Liquid investable assets. Money in index funds, ETFs, brokerage accounts, retirement accounts. Money that is actively exposed to market returns. $100,000 sounds like a lot. It also sounds like a somewhat arbitrary number, so let me explain why it isn't. At a conservative average annual return of 7%, which is roughly what a diversified index fund portfolio has returned historically after inflation, $100,000 generates about $7,000 per year in growth, without you touching it, without you doing anything. $7,000 just appears, almost like a ghost, added silently to your account. Now, $7,000 is not freedom. It's not even close to life-changing on its own. But here's what makes it significant. $7,000 is, for many people, roughly 2 to 3 months of savings, which means at this milestone, your money is doing the work of 2 to 3 months of your labor every single year, automatically, invisibly. That's the shift. That's what David hasn't felt yet because he hasn't crossed it. Below $100,000, your contributions dominate your growth. Your monthly deposits matter more than your returns. The market going up or down 10% barely registers against how much you're actively putting in, which means your primary lever is still your behavior, your discipline, your sacrifice. Above $100,000, something starts to invert, slowly at first, then faster. Your returns start to compete with your contributions, then match them, then eventually exceed them. The math starts working in a new direction. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime business partner, once said that getting to his first $100,000 was the hardest financial thing he ever did. Not the first million, not the first 10 million, the first 100,000, because that's the threshold where compounding becomes real, where it stops being a chart someone shows you in a presentation and starts being something you can actually see in your own account. The reason most people never feel momentum in their finances is that they spend their entire 20s and 30s trying to optimize their savings rate before they've built enough capital for the math to help them. They're pushing a boulder uphill, and the hill doesn't get easier until you clear that first ridge. So, milestone 1, $100,000 in investable assets, the point where compounding stops being theoretical. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because the second milestone isn't just a bigger version of the first one, it operates on an entirely different principle. And most people, even those who understand the first milestone perfectly, never see the second one coming. The second milestone is somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million in net worth. The exact number varies by cost of living and lifestyle, but the principle is universal. At this point, something new enters the equation. Not just returns, optionality. Let me explain what I mean. When your net worth is low, every financial decision is essentially forced. You have to work. You have to take whatever job is available because you need the income to survive and save. Your choices are constrained by necessity, which means even if you're good at your job, even if you're talented, you're negotiating from a position of weakness because your employer knows, even if they'd never say it out loud, that you need this more than they do. That asymmetry is worth more than most people realize. When you cross into the mid-six-figure to seven-figure range, something shifts in your negotiating posture. Not dramatically, not overnight, but the knowledge, even just the private knowledge, that you could walk away, that you have a runway of several years before financial pressure would become existential, that changes how you operate. Research on this is actually fascinating. Studies on labor economics have consistently shown that workers with higher liquid assets negotiate higher salaries, accept fewer lowball offers, and are significantly more likely to leave underperforming employment situations. Not because they're braver, not because they have better personalities, simply because the math allows them to wait. And when you can wait, leverage shifts in your direction. There's also a tax dimension here that most people don't talk about, and it's frankly almost absurd once you see it. In the United States, long-term capital gains, money you make from investments held longer than a year, are taxed at either 0, 15, or 20%, depending on your income bracket. Compare that to ordinary income, which gets taxed at rates up to 37%. Here's the irony. The person earning $150,000 a year from a salary pays a higher marginal tax rate on their income than the person earning the same amount from investments. The system is specifically structured to reward accumulated capital over ongoing labor. It's not a bug, it's a design choice. And until you're playing in the asset class, it's working against you. At the second milestone, you start having enough capital to generate meaningful income from investments. Not enough to retire, but enough to start shifting your tax exposure. Enough that the system's built-in preferences start aligning with your situation rather than working against it. This is the milestone that separates the financially comfortable from the financially flexible. Comfort means you're okay. Flexibility means the rules start bending. Now, the third milestone. This one is different in character from the first two. The first milestone was about compounding becoming real. The second was about optionality and leverage. The third is about something harder to quantify and almost uncomfortable to say out loud. The third milestone is financial escape velocity. It's the point at which your net worth generates enough annual return to cover your living expenses without depleting the principal. You've probably heard this framed as the 4% rule, a concept that emerged from financial research in the 1990s, suggesting that a retiree could withdraw 4% of their portfolio annually and, historically, never run out of money over a 30-year period. Controversial in some circles, debated constantly, but the underlying principle is solid enough to use as a framework. At a 4% withdrawal rate, you need 25 times your annual expenses invested to reach this milestone. If you spend $50,000 a year, you need $1.25 million. If you spend $100,000, you need $2.5 million. The math is clean and simple and completely indifferent to how you feel about it. But here's what nobody talks about when they explain this milestone. It's not primarily a financial event, it's a psychological one. And the psychological shift is more disorienting than most people expect. For your entire life, up to this point, you have existed inside a system where your time has been implicitly owned by something else, a job, a client, a business that needs you present to function. Even if you love your work, even if you're your own boss, the underlying pressure is always there. The alarm clock doesn't go off because you want it to. It goes off because something external requires your presence. When you cross this third milestone, that pressure doesn't immediately disappear, but for the first time in your life, it becomes optional. And optional is a different universe from mandatory. What's fascinating and slightly dark is what often happens next. Studies on early retirees, on lottery winners, on people who reach financial independence earlier than expected, consistently show a period of profound disorientation, identity crises, a collapse in sense of purpose, relationships strained by the sudden asymmetry of freedom. The people who do best at this milestone are the ones who understood before crossing it that money was never the point, that the goal was never to stop working, but to start choosing. There's a meaningful difference. One is escape, the other is agency. And agency, it turns out, is an incredibly difficult thing to manage when you've spent your whole life operating without it. Here's the bigger picture. These three milestones, 100,000, mid 6 to 7 figures, and full escape velocity, are not just personal finance benchmarks. They're a map of how economic stratification actually works. Because the mechanics that make each milestone transformative are the same mechanics that explain why wealth concentrates the way it does in modern economies. Compounding is not neutral. It is, by mathematical nature, a system that rewards those who already have. The $100,000 threshold doesn't just help individuals, it explains why the asset-owning class has seen its wealth grow at a structurally faster rate than the wage-earning class for the past 4 decades. It's not greed, it's arithmetic. The optionality that comes with the second milestone explains why established companies can absorb bad quarters that would destroy startups, why experienced investors can hold through crashes that force newer investors to sell, why in negotiation, patience almost always beats urgency. And the escape velocity of the third milestone, the point at which capital fully replaces labor income, that's not just personal freedom, that's the structural definition of capital ownership. That's what the economists are talking about when they cite the growing share of national income going to capital rather than labor. It's this. It's people who've crossed that third line. A group that keeps growing, pulling an increasing share of total economic output, not through exploitation necessarily, but simply because the math compounds in their direction faster than wages can follow. There's no villain in this story, which is, in some ways, the most unsettling part. So, where does that leave David? He's 34. 60,000 away from the first milestone, following all the right advice, saving consistently, and still feeling like the ground isn't moving under his feet. The answer isn't to tell him to save more. He's already saving responsibly. The answer is to tell him what he's actually building toward and why the first decade always feels like pushing rope. Because once he crosses that first threshold, the math changes, not a little, fundamentally. And the people who understand these milestones don't just cross them faster, they make different decisions at every stage because they understand what each stage is actually for. The question worth sitting with, and I mean genuinely sitting with, is this. Most of us have been taught to measure financial success by income, by lifestyle, by what we can afford to buy, to drive, to wear, to live in. But the 3 milestones we've walked through today have almost nothing to do with consumption. They're about accumulation, leverage, and eventually freedom from the system of mandatory exchange between time and money that most people never question. Which raises a more uncomfortable question than anything we've covered today. If the people who've crossed these milestones are operating by an entirely different set of rules that are built into the structure of the economic system itself, then what exactly are the rest of us optimizing for? That's not a rhetorical question, and I don't have a clean answer. But I think the fact that most people never ask it at all is the most expensive mistake they never knew they were making.